Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first Big Dice panel in about 3 years. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have two of my good brothers here in the temple. We have the man who wandered out of Ogre Gate to tell me a very strange thing that happened in Songling, and then a stranger thing in New England. The one and only Brendan Davis, and making his return to the temple, the man who is the breaker of clouds, the one and only CJ Leung. How you two doing today?
Hello.
Doing good.
What's up?
It is unfortunately the end of winter. I miss the cold already.
Not a fan of the heat?
No.
Well, it's the end of summer down here in Australia. The opposite land.
Yeah. If I hear complaints about cold, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be from the folks I know in Australia. Although, depending on how cold the cold gets, I may end up laughing.
How cold does it get where you are, Mildra?
Well, there was that vortex incident earlier in the year where it got to 50 below.
Oh wow. Okay, we got low, but we did not get that low.
No.
Oh,
Bring up to the name.
Whenever those kind of vortexes happen, I usually end up getting a message from my employer saying, "Stay the hell home."
Yeah, I'm always worried about the pipes. That's always the thing that makes me most paranoid when the weather really drops, like, below the 20s or whatever.
I'm more paranoid of the train tracks, because ice could make a train derail, and I live near some train tracks.
Oh, yeah, that would concern me too. And I would probably not travel on trains during that period.
Oh yeah. But with that in mind, when I'd gone through Ouka Houshin on the Valley of the Judge series on this channel, and a big reason I wanted to do this roundtable is to bring in folk who have far more experience with wuxia and qianxia than I do, and kind of get their perspective on this particular project, which I have talked with the guy who was instrumental in translating the game, Awkward, and it was tricky for him to do the translation because he's translating Japanese by way of Chinese.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
You saying something, CJ?
Oh yeah. Well, I think it is quite obvious that this is based on the Investiture of the God, which is a classic Chinese novel, but not one of the big four. It is, the name is actually very clever. Ouka Houshin. It's a pun. Ouka means, central flower, but the ka also means, the character also means China. So it's central China, but the word Ouka is a pun of the sakura flower. So it is a Japanified Chinese themed sort of like a game, because the Japanese do a lot of their spin on other like classic literature from other parts of the world. For example, the Suikoden series. In Japanese, it is called the Genso Suikoden, or actually just imaginary Suikoden. So you just add a dragon to Suikoden, which is the Japanese pronunciation of water margin, which is a classic Chinese novel. So this is really interesting. And, actually, they have access to the Investiture of the God novel for a really long time, but it really picked up in 1989 when there was a translation by Anu Tsutomu that got popular. So that is why we get Ouka Houshin, which came out at 1994, and the Houshin Engi manga came out in 1996. So that is what there was a small boom there. And this author, which translated Investiture of the Gods to Japanese, he added in quite a few of his own flair to the story, which some people criticize because it is quite different to the original novel. But then again, the original novel is a classic, but it is not really up to the par to the four great classical Chinese novels. Even the celebrated Chinese commentator and also author Xun from the early 20th century criticized it as really formulaic because if you read it in the original novel it is not quite episodic. It's the group of good guys came to a new sort of like a siege situation where they face a certain type of enemies with certain magical artifacts, and they need to solve this issue by either finding the right person to deal with a trap or find the right artifact, the MacGuffins for each different episode. It just keeps repeating in the same way. So that's why it's not considered a great literature because it's too formulaic and the writing is not very clever. But the adaptations of the source material, which is quite a lot even in China itself, makes it a timeless classic because the adaptations are often more entertaining than the original source material. And back to the 1989 translation, it is very influential in Japanese because it was also the base for the manga, and also it created a weird naming convention for Neza. Neza is the childlike god, that's often usually that is often spun off separately from the main text because he is quite an interesting figure, and you can see the recent blockbuster movie from China, Neza 2 and Neza 1 and so on. The name is Neza. The normal Japanese pronunciation for it would be Nata, but this author created a term, a new name for it, a new spelling for it, which is Nataku. That's why if you look at various Japanese characters or even like the Gundam, they have the Gundam Nataku, which means Gundam Neza. It is a convention created by him. So this is why but to be honest, a lot of classic Chinese literature sort of like conventions have been integrated into Japanese for a really long time. Even the senin term, which means immortal, or in Chinese, xian, you can find it in a lot of their literature, and even like from historical figures too, like semi-mystical historical figures. For people who are familiar with Dragon Ball, of course, people are, they know who Master Roshi is, right? In Japanese, his name is Kame Sennin, which means turtle immortal. And even the founder of Shugendo, it's a practice of ascetic practice in Japan, where the practitioner go to Japan and practice various like meditation techniques from Buddhism, from Shinto, and even from Taoism. It's a bit of a mixed bag of like asceticism. um, the founder is considered a senin too. So, you know, in a lot of the polytheistic societies, they just mix a lot of like various ascetic practices in. They just mix everything into their own practices, and this has become the Japanese sort of like a way of syncretism.
Mhm. Now,
Yeah. Right,
when
and I guess I can just keep going on if you want, but I think I should let you talk. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I just wanted to say I was wondering about the investiture of the gods, and because I had read I don't think I've ever seen a real full English translation of it, but I have a book called Tales of the Tea House, which is almost more like, if I understand correctly, a woman who is kind of recounting her memory of the story. And so it's kind of like what you were talking about, where I think the author is maybe injecting some other things that might not be in the original source material. But I was wondering, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was wondering if that's what was going on here or not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the author is actually a Taiwanese, Ano Tsutomu. That's his Japanese name. He was born in colonial Japan, studied in Hong Kong, and then he eventually migrated to Japan and wrote this book, which he said is more real than the original source material because this is uh, the the story as remembered by uh, Chinese popular masses, because there are lots of adaptations and like, well, this is just his opinion. Actually, a lot of like experts disagree with him, but this is the version that got popular in Japan. He added the rivalry between uh, Jiang Ziya, which is the main character, and Sun Gongbao, which is the main antagonist. The original source, the main antagonist Sun Gongbao is just plain bad guy, villainous, evil villain. But in the Japanese version, he's become more of a neutral, sort of like anti-hero, rival sort of character, which the Japanese love.
Okay.
So so yeah, that's how he gets the Japanese audience. So he just rewrite quite a few things to suit the Japanese taste. But this is quite common in Japan. The Three Kingdoms, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Sangokushi in Japan is actually the version that is most popular was the novel version by Eiji Yoshikawa. From around the middle of the 20th century. This is the version that got popular, and also they create a manga out of it, which is also influenced by by the manga author's own sensibilities, Yokoyama Mitsuteru. So there are a lot of different versions of Three Kingdoms. The official Chinese one, and then there is the Eiji Yoshikawa version from the middle of 20th century, post-war 20th century. That was very popular in Japan. This is, in the first part of the story, in the original Chinese version, Liu Bei just met Zhang Fei and Guan Yu, and they became brothers immediately. They just vibe together really well. But in the Japanese version, Liu Bei went on his own adventure first. He went around the land, just becoming a hero, helping those who are weak, and he just sees the destruction and all the corruption in the land by him, with his own eyes. That's why he wants to start his own faction and so on. That's why in Japan, Liu Bei is a lot more popular because Eiji Yoshikawa created a bit of like a buffer chapter before the start of the official story that follows a bit more closely to the Chinese version. And but his version ends at the death of Zhuge Liang. But in the Chinese version, the story goes on, and we see the fall of the three empires. It's a bit of a bummer. Doesn't work for a lot of modern like readers. So that is why he ends the story there. It's very understandable. But the manga version, Yokoyama Mitsuteru, who is a legendary mangaka, he adapted Eiji Yoshikawa's version, added a few more original characters, and then the story went on past the death of Zhuge Liang. So, everyone has their own version. Uh, and, this is also done to fit the Japanese sort of sensibility, what a hero should be like. This is why, a really funny thing when I went to the Confucius temple in Japan, they think that Confucius is a bit not too manly as they would consider it. Because that's why they added a sword to his side. In China, you would never see Confucius with a sword, but in Japan, you see a Confucius statue with a sword on his belt. That's a really funny thing.
So, with that in mind, from my own perspective, one of the big reasons I delved into this thing to begin with was I was delving more and more into the works of Group SNE, especially since I've been spending quite a long time trying to correct the record when it comes to the relationship between Lodos and Sword World, since that particular narrative is still insisted upon by a lot of people. But obviously, with this, the whole thing of creating immortals and eventually reaching a full kind of immortality after accumulating a quirk of the the translation. So I ended up asking Awkward about it, and cave is more or less the term that was used.
I mean, it reminds me of the like in a lot of wuxia movies and stories where the guy starts in a cave with his master before he ventures into the world. That's what it brought to my mind when I was going over that section.
Which do you suppose that is likely? And if I do a bit of scrolling back, I might be able to. If I do a bit of scrolling back, I might be able to find the characters that were used.
I mean, CJ might know more about this than I do, but like when I think of like a movie like Hero Shed No Tears or the novel that it's based on, the character, he starts with his master, like, in seclusion, like in a cave or in a mountain. And there's like a lot of, that's like a trope you see all the time. So I thought it seemed kind of cool because I was like, oh yeah, I can imagine this. And it's kind of a really great way to start things and to kind of to tie all of these different lineages together. But I didn't know how literally we were supposed to take the whole cave thing.
No, I don't think it's supposed to be that literal. Yeah. And I just put in the original characters that Aquid had sent me when I asked him about it.
Okay.
That is in the side chat. Oh. Because he had.
Yeah, I would certainly not be able to comment on the characters.
Yeah.
Right. I never seen this. Well, 8 cavern, but I never seen the term used like this. It might be Japanese thing. I don't know, or could be a really esoteric like Taoist thing. And this is not something we usually see in like Investiture of the Gods or other like Shinxia sort of thing. Okay, so, but I would say the proper genre for Investiture of the Gods would be Senmo, which is like gods and devils, because obviously there are lots of gods and devils in it. And um, yeah, I mean, in Japan, they treat various Chinese literature and Chinese history as how the West treats like Greek history. So it's a bit like they are very familiar with that thing, but they have a bit of their own spin to it. And um, with with this sort of like some more, I think they may have like conflated a lot of the stories with uh, Omyoji because uh, Anno Gyoja, he is the founder of Shugendo. He is considered as a sennin. Sennin is a term used like in Taoism as a somebody who had attained immortality through their various like Taoist practices. But it is often used uh, generically in Japanese. So even Shugenja, someone who practices Shugendo, can become Sennin. And for those of you who are familiar with the manga and anime Zenki, Enno Gyojia was the first like master of like Zenki and Goki, which is Zenki literally means front ghost or front demon and back demon. So this Shugenja, the founder of Shugendo, pretty much has his own demon tanks for if he's a caster.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it might be this eighth cavern might be Japanese thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah. There are there are these sets of because they're described of eight branches and 12 types of immortal arts within the book. And speaking of that, I did want to go through the different types of immortal arts, and you can tell me if there's a character in either classical or more modern literatures that comes to mind when I describe what this particular set of arts is able to do. Think of it as some of the lightning round experiments I've done in the past interviews with both of you guys. Uh, the the first of this, actually the first five, is what is referred to as the five escapes. Each of them is involving manipulating an element and overcoming, and we're dealing with the five Chinese elements with this. So wood, fire, earth, metal, and water.
Yep.
And supposedly it's written as escapes because you are overcoming one of the elements or evading one of the elements.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's. I guess it's a translation choice. At first I don't quite understand what it means.
Yeah, I was
Five
thrown by
escapes.
that
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I mean, you see a lot of like five element stuff in the genres. Do you know what I mean? So I mean that's pretty common.
Yep.
Yep.
But the five escapes was kind of a very odd phrasing.
Well, one of each of the one of the first tier effects you have with each of them is use one style to overcome another style. Like use wood style to overcome earth style, use fire style to overcome metal style, and so on.
Yep.
Which, I mean, thematically that works.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in the same vein, usually command style to create style, or to know style.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, because if you look at the elemental chart, there is an overcoming chart and there is also a production chart. For example, Earth produces metal and metal produces water because dew appears on metal, and water produces wood and so on. And wood produces what I forgot. Yeah. Um, and the other one is fire overcomes wood, and water overcomes fire, and so on. So there are two different cycles you can see there.
Yeah, but The next one after the 5 escapes is transformation/illusion. Uh, I remember I asked Awkward to play that same kind of character association game, and what instantly came to mind for him was um, the transformation abilities that Sun Wukong has.
Exactly. Yep. That's
Uh,
correct.
but and I'm pretty sure and a lot of the illusion parts of it are at higher tiers of it. Most of the techniques on that list are about transforming something temporarily, or either transforming into inanimate objects, transforming into animals, uh, changing attributes of the body like elongating the neck or shrinking the body. Is in that particular ability list.
Mhm. Yeah, actually, transformation and illusion are very common abilities if you look at the various, uh, various Zenmo novels or like Xianxia novels. And besides Sun Wukong, Erlangsen or Yang Jian, he also appears in Investiture of the Gods. He's one of the main characters with Nerza. It's uh, Yang Jian, which is the other name for Erlangsen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Nerza, the two of them are the most favorite generals of Jiang Ziya. So, they do lots of transformations. Nerza can grow 4 more arms, so he becomes 3-headed and 6-armed
Yep, that's one of
warrior.
the tier 10 abilities on that list.
All right, yep, that too. And Yang Jian is really good at other types of transformation. He can transform into somebody else to deceive and so on.
Mm-hmm. Uh, but the next one is the next type is summoning spirits. Um, whether it be a guardian spirit, whether it be the 3 corpses, whether it be spirit messengers. Um, the and a lot of the techniques in this list all open with the word prayer.
One thing, I'm assuming, but most of this is all Taoist stuff in this game, right? Like, it's none of this is meant to be like Buddhist prayer or anything like that, correct?
It never specified with when we were reading it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. The praying part might be influenced by Japanese Shinto practice. When you go to the temple, you like put in money and then you ring the bell, clap your hand, bow, clap your hand. The ritual. Maybe uh, it's more influenced by Japanese, but in Journey to the West and Investiture of the Gods, they often just call the local like Tutigong, which is the local earth god, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they just like fly up to heaven and speak to the gods and so on. It's a bit less formal than the Japanese.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to guardian spirits, they're described as soldiers of heaven. Um, the 3 corpses are described as the spiritual beings that dwell within the human body. Um, Seiko in the head.
Isn't that like the
Hak-
3 parts of the soul or something?
Mhm.
Mhm. uh,
Yeah, I think you're right.
one in the head, one in the chest, and one in the abdomen. And when they become active, one experiences mental discomfort or physical illness. I think, if I recall correctly, the lack of one of these is what causes what's known as the hungry dead.
I think that has to do with the divisions of the soul, but I'm not 100% sure there.
Yeah.
Uh, but spirit messengers are referred to as artificial spirits by fusing yin and yang energy.
Mhm.
I thought the stuff with yin and yang in this game was very interesting.
Mhm.
that was one of the things that I really liked about it was the whole way that um, like I forget exactly what the parameters were 'cause there's a lot of explanation of rules in this game. But basically, like if you know if the goal is to not be at zero, essentially, to be in one direction or the other. And I think if you're too balanced, like that's like that is what ultimately can lead you to death in this, right? Am I mistaken? Or is it the mingling of the two that leads to death?
Um, it's when there is a separation, you end up being able to add to your lifespan.
Uh-huh.
If that separation
Okay.
is in the negative, then you end up becoming a evil immortal, and
Yeah.
the GM is going to look
Yeah.
at you and say, "Hand me your character sheet. That's an NPC now." Uh, which I remember when I talked with Xanatrix about it, he was kind of iffy about that particular concept, but that was his perspective. He had also suggested that sect might be a better term instead of cave. Honestly, with that one, I could go either
Okay.
way. It is certainly an interesting choice.
Yeah, I really admire whoever could translate this because it looks like a utter, utter like a quagmire
Oh, I
for to
I can
translate.
I can tell you I can tell you just from speaking with him, it very much was. I ended up channeling the Tropic Thunder gag of I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude because
Yeah.
um Chinese is not his strong suit by his own admission. And trying to translate Japanese by way of that is trying to be Chinese is is Inception level of layers to the point that when he wrote out the Immortal Arts, he put in the original characters, what they translate to in English, and what they translate to in Chinese as a way of being somewhat completionist, I suppose.
Yep. Yep.
Like this is one of the examples in summoning spirits. I just put in these in the chat for you guys.
Yeah, I remember looking at that ability.
Hmm.
By the way, I think, it's not Shan Sha or anything, but I think Pu Song Ling would be a very good source for, things like guiding lost souls to the netherworld and stuff.
Oh yeah.
There's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of stories in there where, there are people that go, that go before the magistrates of hell and things like that.
Hmm.
So that kind of genre can also give you a lot of cool stuff to work with here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But one of the interesting choices of names for Immortal Arts is actually the next one, which is Transcendental Whistling.
I liked that one. That one I thought was cool. And again, I'm more interested in wuxia and stuff, but there's like so many, like great masters in all of these stories and movies that can take something like singing or painting and turn it into like a lethal art. And so, I thought that it was interesting that they incorporated that. I also thought it was interesting that hobbies were so significant in the game too. I thought
Hmm.
that was another cool trope.
Yeah. What's interesting about this kind of technique as it's presented here is at lower tiers, it is about talking to and communicating and controlling animals, and then as we get higher up, it's about summoning five elements or having direct control over the weather. Like one of them is a chant that's all about summoning hail. Uh,
Mhm.
one of the tail end ones even is summoning night.
Well, okay. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, but like summoning rain and so on is pretty common, sort of like Taoist tropes, and yeah, uh, it's depicted in various classical novels too, even like Water Margin,
mhm.
um, even Three Kingdoms, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Zhuge Liang summoning the wind, and so on. It is, yeah, it is quite a common trope actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And would you have any guesses as to why whistling was used as the name of this kind of family of techniques?
Not sure why they would use whistling.
Yeah, not sure.
I'm guessing because each of them is a song, like they open up with song 2, and then what it's doing.
Oh, you mean in the actual what page of the because I'm looking at the precept section. What page are the actual descriptions of the abilities on?
That starts on page 114 in the player's handbook. And
okay, let me get to that.
Transcendental Whistling is on page starts on page
28?
one on page 163.
63. I did like the way these were laid out. I thought these were very organized and very clear, and I liked the black on white banner at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. You said what page was that on again?
163.
163.
And because of I know it'd be tempting to call these lists classes, but this isn't really a class-based game. And
you can master multiples of these, right? Like you can master like one cave style and then like another, right? You just have to reach a certain level to do it.
Pretty much. And it is based on the skill on the immortal art, the use value skill, which is why it's separated of requiring use value 1 through 10. But after that, there's also feng shui / divination, which a lot of the techniques in that begin with I know the principles of something. Usually, I know the principles of the world.
Yep. Well, feng shui and divination, it comes hand in hand, really.
Mm-hmm.
And
a lot of them are typically about understanding the laws of the world and inflicting those laws on the environment around the user. For example, one of the starting ones is I know the principles of the world and seal interdiction arts, which just has it that someone who's, and I'll get to interdiction arts later on. It just says that person there who can use interdiction arts, until I say otherwise, you're not using them. It's basically cancels those arts, the ones that have been cast at the very least, and can interrupt with the ones that are going to be cast.
Well, it's like feng shui is all about chi flow too, right? And like all of these, the immortal arts, they're all based on chi cultivation, so it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Or I know the laws of time and seize the initiative.
I like that one.
That's cool.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Because instead of rolling for initiative individually, this is one of those cases where you're rolling against an initiative target number, and if you fail that target number, the enemy goes first. And if somebody has this particular immortal art, they can just say, I know we failed that roll, but we're going first anyways because I said so. Though it has the cost of, if you use that technique during that round, you can't act.
Wait, if you use the the one that you just mentioned, the person who uses it can't act, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they're following the principle of losing the right to act immediately after. And interdiction, I remember when I asked Aquid about it, one of the characters that he brought up was Eraserhead from My Hero Academia, where interdiction is all about stopping people from being able to do something or stopping things from being able to act.
Oh yeah, the blue deck from Magic the Gathering, pretty much.
Yeah, blue decks, salt harvesting included, or just sealing. Like one of the tier 2 effects is if you forbid the light, then it cannot illuminate, which just seals light from candles.
Yeah, I think
So it's
it's
just
very
basically, you're just like basically stopping things, is what it's suggesting.
It doesn't. That effect doesn't remove the flame on the candle. It just doesn't produce light.
The light doesn't project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This happens a lot in Festival of the Gods because this happens in pretty much every arc because the enemies always come up with new magical artifacts or special abilities that Jiang Ziya has to like cancel out. And one of the more memorable scenes in the book is when there is a soul catching device used by the enemy, and the good guys just send out Nerza because Nerza already died previously and he is reborn through the body of a lotus, so he doesn't have any soul anymore, and that's why on how it is worded is quite specific. I don't quite remember. Maybe it can only take the soul of a person, but since Nerza is created out of Lotus, he is Lotus incarnate, and that's why I know his soul cannot be taken by that device. So a lot of that uh, canceling out of other parties' ability happens a lot of times in Festival of the Gods.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the, and some of them aren't making things not exist. Sometimes it's just you're not affected by people or things. Like for example, at tier 4, there's if you forbid the wall, then it cannot obstruct. Where a wall that's about 1 zang or 3 square meters becomes passable regardless of its composition. It doesn't remove the wall, you just can go right through it as if it wasn't there.
Go right through it.
Yeah, it's clever, yeah.
Or I think one of the tier 10 ones was if you forbid soldiers, then they cannot fight, which targets a whole army and they just can't fight, period.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. But the next one is Goo Alchemy, which does involve elixirs, does involve toxins, but also involves its own form of what could be considered a homunculus at higher tiers.
Which ability is that?
Goo Alchemy. I believe
No, which the homunculus ability. Do you remember which one that is?
So I might be actually. I think it was some. I'd have to double check. I will look into that later. I think it may have not been in the player's handbook. It has been a bit of time since.
And it's a complicated game. It's a complicated game. So, yeah. But I mean, the alchemy I thought was very. I mean, that connects to a lot of stuff. The alchemy, because you see that all the time. Do you know what I mean? And especially, but I'm curious about the homunculus one because I wanted to know if it was like the nature of it, if it was like if it was it like somehow imbuing like an object with spirit or something, or
Um, let me let me see something. I think that was in the third book, scenarios and data.
oh, okay, then never mind.
Um,
That wouldn't have been one that I would have remembered, so I wouldn't. It's just not what I'm thinking.
um, yeah, it's what's referred to as servant beasts.
Okay.
Uh, and let's see. I believe there was one that ties into that. Like it is obviously it's not literally referred to as an elixir, but not as an elixir, but as a homunculus. But if you're going to be calling something, um, oh oh yeah, here it was. It was in the it was something that's in the um treasures section. Servant beasts, and servant beasts are something that is tied to goo alchemy.
Hmm.
Uh, it's considered high end, um, by
Yeah.
using medicines, crossbreeding species, and infusing them with key.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's cool. That's
Hmm.
cool. Like you'll see characters that have things like a like I remember there was one TV show I was watching where this character sort of inadvertently did that. I forget what kind of creature it was. It started out as like a worm or something like that, and then eventually it could take human form. Um, but
Hmm.
I liked but that's technically an immortal treasure that you're creating.
Yeah, and a big thing with the immortal treasures is the more complex and powerful ones take a long time to make, which ties into the fact that the game has a whole set of mechanics just around um, lifespan.
That I thought was very cool because the span between sessions
Hmm.
can be like 9 days to like I forget how many. It was like 150,000 years, something
Yeah,
crazy. No, 10,000 years. 10,000 years.
yeah.
That
For
is a wild span of time between
for
sessions.
Hmm.
for example, the two treasures that they bring up, and I'm very grateful that there was an optional rule for creating your own immortal treasures. Otherwise, I would have had a few things to say. Um, like a quick warm stove, which is they don't call it that, but it's basically a microwave you can hide in your sleeve. um,
Nice.
Takes 9 months to make, whereas the flame-tipped spear takes 9 years.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yep. I guess that makes sense because flame tip spear is a iconic weapon used by Nerza, so that's supposed to be a legendary weapon, I think.
mhm.
Is CJ? Isn't there also a thing where like a day in like heaven is like a year on
Yeah.
Earth or something?
Oh
Isn't that
yeah.
like a trope?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. There's a common trope. Yeah.
Hmm. Uh, one of the metal treasures is just a straight up iron sword that takes 9 months to make. Because it's stated that in Ouka, bronze weapons are still the predominant form of metal weapon.
Mm.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And but I also, I really, the thing with the time too is, I don't know, because they have that system set up where you roll, and it can be anything in between. It's even though it says it takes like 9 years or whatever, that's really not that huge of a deal because that 10,000 years can come up anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
as long as as long as it's not like a 9-day difference and
Yeah.
you just, each time you roll.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah. But
Yeah, and it is. I think they are depicting it according to the history because investiture of the gods actually happened during the transition between Song Dynasty and Zhou Dynasty. So it happened like about 3,000 years ago. So it makes sense they would be using bronze weapons.
mm-hmm. uh, which but the final type of immortal art that's brought up is malefic sympathy / overcoming arts, uh, which a lot of them involve things like dolls or effigies. Sometimes it's paper balls, sometimes not paper balls, paper dolls, sometimes wooden or stone dolls, uh, and a lot of
And
it
that's that.
is tied to curses.
Yeah, that it reminded me a lot of stuff like, and this is way out of genre, but stuff like the Black Magic movies and stuff. Things where they're,
Mhm.
or movies we have like the dueling Taoist
Mm-hmm.
ritual masters. Um, it seemed like a pretty uh, cool set of abilities.
Yep. In some cases, it isn't messing with it all, but using that as a focus to create something. Like at tier 4, there's resembling a horse galloping across the land equally, which creates a horse from a doll and lets you control it. Uh, though it's only active for a day. Uh, but some of the term Daoyin is used quite a bit. Um,
Mhm.
as a requirement for a lot of the techniques. Uh,
Mhm.
and some of them do create full on soldiers. One of one of the high end one creates a group of tigers. uh, where at a low tier you're just creating one, at higher tiers you're creating more. But there was a heavy implication that that people who utilize these malefic arts are looked at with a bit of a side eye from other immortals because of the reputation with curses. So even if they're not an
Well, yeah,
evil
because you
immortal, they're
can.
looked at like one.
Well, like one of them, you can affect people's relationships with each other and stuff. So it does seem like this is a really sort of, again, black magic-y type
Mhm.
subterfuge where you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, you're not doing nice things to people with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing that's funny about this game, they don't let you play evil characters, right? Because if you end up going too far in that direction, you become an NPC.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you'd have to use all this stuff for righteous reasons, um, if you want to remain a PC.
Yeah. Though there's no doubt plenty of characters that um are very much straddling that line of using stuff that's on the border between the two sides, but are still using it for righteous means.
Well,
It's just the
well,
thing.
also for karma, do you get is it like is it just based on the precepts that you're following your karma? Like if you adhere to the precepts, your karma gets is positive, or is it based on objective principles that everybody has to abide by?
Um, obviously, the measuring for this is your virtue value, which starts out being based on your skill values. Uh, is meant to be the sum of them. Uh, but let me let me double check. Let me double check the. But the like some of the ways that you can lose it is through the reverse success rule, which reverse success is claimed to be optional. But even when we were covering the game, I'd said that so much of reverse success feels tied into the rest of the mechanics. I'm not sure how optional it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to play the game to say, just because there was so much to this system. But I mean, it struck me as like if not something you had to use, something that you would likely want to use. It had it was very appealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can,
just as a player, it just seemed like it would be something you'd want to have on the table. But
yeah, the central idea with it is that you could use it to flip a failure into a success, but every time you do, it comes with its own risks.
Yeah.
And the virtue value is tied to the destiny number, which ties into how much extra lifespan you have. And obviously, but in terms of that, it's really built on the precepts, and each cave lineage has 5 precepts, and you're going to start with 3 of them. So you don't have to take every single precept that's there, but you're going to be taking a few of them, and that amount is going to be added as you start following other cave lineages.
No, and I thought that element was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, just the idea of like especially if cave lineage is, in some way synonymous with sect, like you were suggesting earlier, the idea that, individual sects would have their own precepts to follow.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely makes sense to me.
Yeah. Like, for example, the precepts with transcendental whistling are: enjoy the arts, sing, dance, and learn dancing. Create paintings, make sculptures, and know that beauty surpasses all. Do not hide your thoughts, express them honestly, do not spare your words. Value trust, do not betray, and simply believe till the end. Cherish people and bring happiness through love. Harmony is the foundation of purity. Harmony is the foundation of the world. And obviously, each of the other cave lineages has their own set of precepts. And following those is one of the more reliable ways to advance. And I won't say it's the only way, and at the end of every session, you'll end up getting a set amount of virtue value. Your skill total just determines the baseline of it, which isn't gonna go higher than 18 at character creation. Violating it will bring that down, but it's violations of precepts. Which could result in conflict if you have 2 characters in a party who are going to have different things that they value in that sense.
But I mean, that can happen in anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine.
But we all love character drama.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, and I think a lot of these precepts they're not like gonna necessarily. I guess it would depend on what the combination is. Maybe there's like a particularly volatile combo that you could stumble upon. I don't know.
Well, what I've noticed is that with a lot of the way the precepts are written, they're somewhat open to interpretation.
Okay.
So because of that, there is the non-zero chance that someone's interpretation of the precepts that they picked could create issues.
Okay. No, that would make sense. Yeah, but I think just like I'm going back to that section now. I'm trying to find it at least. But I think that you know that if they're that open to interpretation, that's really going to be more about the players than the precepts
Yeah.
themselves.
There's nothing. There's always the possibility that you end up having that guy. Sometimes that guy is not a
in every
guy,
campaign.
but everybody's had a horror story involving that guy, even if that guy is not a guy.
Yeah.
But I will say, and again, I don't tend to run campaigns that are. Some of my games can get into levels approaching this, but they're usually more wuxia levels.
Mhm.
But this kind of setting where you have different sects and you have people who are following different masters or following different paths, they do lend themselves to player versus player sometimes. So I don't think that would be such a bad thing in a setting like this. Provided the people can handle that kind of conflict in the game.
Yeah, the threshold cross when it comes to becoming an evil immortal is when the total skill value becomes higher than their virtue value.
Oh yeah, that's really cool.
Which you can obviously you can increase skill values as you develop, but it's going to be a lot easier to increase virtue than it is skills. Especially since this is one of those roll against the skill to see if you have it grow. The rule is you roll 2d. Much like some of the other projects that Group S&E did, you roll 2d6, and that is the only die you're going to be rolling. This should be very familiar to you, CJ.
T6 system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should say it's a hero system eat your heart out game too, because it's just like formula after formula for like the first 40 pages of I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's one of these older games where you really have to read through systematically so that you understand each step of character creation and how you arrive at each number, and then that informs other aspects of the system, and then there's usually a formula for that as well. So it's quite involved in that respect.
But the idea is you'd roll 2d6, add the value of the growth part of the ability score. If you roll 15 or higher, then the skill value goes up by 1 point. And this is done for each skill or endurance value that you.
Now, is that just automatic? You just check each one to see if it goes up, or is something have to trigger that?
It is something that is triggered and is rolled at the end of a session that would. It's one of those. It is one of those things that you have an opportunity to do when your virtue value goes up.
Okay.
And it's on a 1-to-1. You're just picking which ones you try and develop, and there is the non-zero chance that you don't succeed. And in that regard, I think at the time I wasn't comparing it to Hero System. I was comparing it to Basic, which oddly enough would make sense since basic role-playing by way of Call of Cthulhu got very popular in Japan.
Oh, that's right. Isn't that like the biggest game in Japan, Call of Cthulhu? Or at least it was at one point.
It
is still
definitely
the most popular one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you know why that is? Out of curiosity, I've always wondered about that. Was it just that it got there first, or was it something where it resonated more than D&D did with them?
I think
D&D
it's a lot of the
did
horror stuff and also the web plays done by Nico Nico. They
mhm,
had a lot of like Call of Cthulhu uh, transcript play that has been, uh,
mhm,
voiced by those like synthetic voice,
mhm. Vocaloid.
that sort of stuff. A Vocaloid, yep.
But D&D has had difficulties maintaining a foothold in Japan. Um, some of that was due to translations of later editions past Basic taking way too long and costing way too much. Other issues were a very stop and start level of support, where it'd be
Okay.
supported for a few years and then there'd be nothing for 5 years, and then it would go right back at it, or a whole new edition would come in for a little while and then just stop.
Okay.
Obviously, there was a gap of a few years because of TSR going the way of the dodo, and it wasn't until the I'd say the early '90s that AD&D First Edition made it to Japan.
Oh wow, that many years after it came out.
Well, but by the time we got to the mid '80s, AD&D wasn't translated. The only reason Ryo Mizuno was using AD&D for Lodos was because he was the only one in Group S&E who knew how to run it. Uh, but it was advised when they published the replay to use Basic instead, since more people had it at the time. But I remember Awkward sharing with me a history of RPGs book, or at least an excerpt of it, where it was talked about that some of the more wargaming aspects of early TTRPGs led to an issue of not being able to fit it in their skin, was the wording used. And I think that has to do with the fact that wargaming and the like never really took off in Japan all that much. CJ, I think you had mentioned that you only saw maybe one wargaming store the last time you were in Japan.
Oh, yeah. I guess a really big issue is the space because it's just really difficult to find a good playing space in Japan. Even those various like TRPG books and game shops, um, uh, you know, the space that they have for play is incredibly small.
Hmm.
Sometimes they even have to hire like karaoke booths
Oh
and
yeah,
play inside it.
yep, I've heard of that. Uh,
Mm.
I think
Yeah,
that's also the
so
reason why episodic play became one of the more dominant formats.
yeah, but I'm not sure anymore because there with the advent of like Discord and uh, various play formats, I think uh, it is possible to play more of a longer continuous campaign. But the thing is, if you look at all the stuff that you can see on YouTube of those live plays, they are very often still very episodic,
Hmm.
especially the ones done by VTubers and so on.
Um, I'd say that's a case of old habits die hard.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
with a lot of folks who probably did episodic play for years on end. Uh, that's get
Mhm.
someone who started out catching with their left hand is always going to be catching with their left hand, uh, unless you really, really try and train yourself out of it, which is not easy. Uh,
Yep.
but and that's not to say there wasn't plenty of support in various magazines. But another thing, and this is to some of the old guard, this is extremely blasphemous. So I love bringing it up, and I love seeing them get mad when I bring it up. Is a lot of early exposure to a lot of the early pipeline when it came to TTRPGs in Japan, from my own observation, was through computer gaming. And a lot of
Yeah.
magazines like CompTeek were servicing TTRPGs and computer games at the same time, Lodos Companion, which I covered about a week ago, was built with the idea of bringing people who had already played the Lodos computer game into TTRPGs, and that was done in 1989. Which, given the shade that's gotten thrown at me over the years for daring to draw upon video games for TTRPGs, I will always find that extremely funny.
Yeah, but I think same thing is happening in the States or the West. Since the release of Baldur's Gate 3, I think there are a lot more players coming in from video game.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot
This
of
has
that.
this has been a thing that's been happening for many years.
The aesthetics of D&D have kind of shifted too, I think, to reflect some of that. But even if you go back to like the late 80s and early 90s, I don't know if you guys remember I think it was the SSI games that
Yeah,
they put out, like
gold
Pulsar
box
Radiance.
games.
Yeah,
I've
those
had
pretty much used. Oh, go
I've
ahead.
had Jim Ward on. I had Jim
Oh,
Ward
okay.
on years ago. God rest his soul. And he had talked about setting up those games with SSI.
Yeah, because those basically, and I'm going by memory here, but I used to play them when I was in like middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
They pretty much used the rules from D&D, and so
Yeah.
when you played them,
let me go one step further. Are you familiar with the early Plato servers from the 70s?
No, I'm not.
That had a D&D module.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I know there was even a game. There was a Dungeons and Dragons game for the Intellivision that I remember my uncle having when I was a kid. And it wasn't. I mean, it was not anywhere near like real Dungeons and Dragons, but it was clearly informed by it in some way. So I think there's always been some kind of crossover. It's funny too because I used to watch a lot of I don't even know what the name of this genre of TV show is, but there was there were a lot of Chinese drama series that seemed to be taking, I think, video games from either Japan or China and turning them into shows, and they would even incorporate things visually into the show that were like clearly like the equipment inventory diagrams in a game or whatever, you know what I mean?
There
Just
were
like
game
all kinds
shows
of
in the UK that did similar things, and some of those have not held up very well with age. A lot of them are painful to go back and watch.
I think one of them was Chinese Paladin. I could be wrong. I think that was one of the series I remember.
That could have been. I know Chinese Paladin is one of the longer running wuxia video game series. I think the other one was and I'm going to apologize in advance for butchering the pronunciation, but Xuan Yuan Sword and Sword and Fairy. Those.
Oh yeah, that was another one I remember. That one had a series. I remember that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was like Scar of Sky, I think. Something I'm trying to remember the subtitle, but
my first exposure to Xuan Yuan Sword was a spin-off called The Gate of Firmament. I was familiar with Chinese Paladin for the longest time. The first entry in that got a remake that was translated, and Sword and Fairy I've had a scattered relationship with, but it's what's kind of funny is that with a lot of the old guard, a lot of the grogs that I've had to put up with over the years, there's this insistence on this hard line, this almost Great Wall of China division between TTRPGs and video games. And you look at the history of both, and that really doesn't hold up. Much in the same way that people are going to be inspired by all manner of things, and going to bring that in one form or another. Like, I had Mark Reinhagen on some years back, and he had talked about how the big inspiration for Vampire the Masquerade was the film Lost Boys.
Oh, interesting. I always assumed it was like Near Dark or something.
No, it was Lost Boys. He came up with the concept after seeing the movie for the first time. Like he was writing notes in the hotel room after seeing the movie.
Whenever I played Vampire, we just went in like a Near Dark direction with it. That was we just went on a killing spree across the country or something, you know.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think 4E was one of the things that really crystallized that division that you're talking about, because that became part of the conversation around fourth edition. And so
it was third
I
that
think,
really crystallized it. It's just everybody's
You think-
everybody's conveniently forgotten that.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't remember that in particular, but you might be right that it's.
I distinctly remember it. I especially remember John Wick bitching up a storm about it. In 2000, him and a bunch of other people stating that.
He said that it was a video game. Well, I can see how he would. See, one of my reactions to 30 when it came out, because I started on AD&D and then I largely GM'd on second edition, and when third edition came out, the thing that kind of bothered me about it, not that it was like video game like, but just that everything was kind of connected to tiles in the grid, and I was somebody who did more theater of the mind type sessions, and so that I found that jarring going from second edition to, because you did have that in second edition, but it wasn't like obligatory. Do you know what I mean? So like if you want to play third edition, there are rules that the rules all account for like a hex grid or not a hex grid, but a square grid and tiles. And so it's just easier to get go ahead.
I think the reason people made, and I've done several videos discussing the some of the narratives that people had regarding fourth, as well as regarding third, and there were a couple of things that I observed. One of them, obviously, was the whole insistence on the grid thing, which did result in some people accusing third edition of turning D&D into Diablo, which is horribly ironic given the Diablo modules that were a thing in various editions, as well as Ravenloft being one of the more popular campaign settings.
What would Ravenloft have to do with that?
Just in the sense of being, dark fantasy leaning into Gothic.
Oh,
lore.
I see. Well, because I was a Ravenloft GM. That was my favorite setting. So that's why I was curious.
It's one of those. Plus, there's the fact that a lot of the players of Diablo, a lot of the designers with Diablo and even Doom, were big D&D fans. You can kind of see that with how you got the Cacodemon in the original Doom. But I do not think it's a coincidence that 4th edition came out in 2008. 2008 was also the same year as Wrath of the Lich King, where World of Warcraft was at its peak level of ubiquity.
Yeah. World of Warcraft was huge then. I do remember that.
And when I looked at the MMO arguments that people were making at the time and afterwards, the vibe that I ended up getting was a lot of people who did not have a full understanding of MMOs in general and World of Warcraft in particular. Because whenever I'd ask, okay, is 4th edition trying to be a sandbox or theme park style MMO? You need to be specific. I'd get looked at like I had steaming turds hanging out of my mouth. And what that told me was a lot of people were using the term MMO as a cudgel.
They were using, you know what it was? Because I was involved in those conversations, and I might have even invoked MMOs, but I didn't really know MMOs at that time. Mm-hmm. And I think what people who were saying that were thinking was that it was really more about how the system really emphasized the game aspects of play. And so I think that's what people were just drawing on the MMO language for.
Which
because once I actually played World of Warcraft, it's very fluid. Do you know what I mean? It's not really what I was imagining.
Yeah,
Because I played it years later.
that was kind of what I'm getting at. And as far as I also heard there's not enough role playing mechanics, which no one could ever really define what role playing mechanics was, and what was role playing mechanic in previous editions.
That I thought was the worst. So, number one, I will say I was not a fan of 4E, but I thought 4E was well designed, and I do think it would make like it's not what I wanted in D&D, but I think the game is a good
Yeah.
game, if that makes
The
sense. Um,
I
but
think the problem is that what people want out of D&D nobody can agree on.
yeah, well, that's the problem they always have is they have to find a like a midpoint that doesn't upset the boat in one direction or the other. I think that's always the challenge for them. Um, but what I was going to say was, I don't think that role playing argument was a particularly good critique of fourth edition because second edition and first edition didn't really have role play mechanics. Third edition is the edition that brought in role play mechanics, and it's one of the things I didn't like about third edition. So, because before that, the closest thing you had to a skill like say bluff or diplomacy was the etiquette skill, and not the etiquette skill, the etiquette non-weapon proficiency. But the etiquette non-weapon proficiency was specifically described more as a knowledge ability
Well,
and not something. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
proficiencies back in second edition was a very late edition that was kind of undercooked, anyways. It didn't.
well, it was optional too. The non-weapon proficiencies were all optional.
Yeah,
And
that's that was the other thing, and some of those kind of mechanics were buried in very specific splat books that were a blink and you miss it. But
yeah, that's
getting
true too.
getting back to the matter here, something that I will admit, something I did find amusing is the relationship between with oral formulas in the different immortal arts, where some of them require them, some of them really require them, and some of them don't. And some of them it's a maybe. Like,
And an oral formula, that's just like you reciting something, I assumed. That was a
yeah.
little unclear on that.
Basically, you are reciting something, and if you have your mouth covered, you can't chant it.
Okay.
In the same vein that if if your hands are bound, you can't perform Dao Yin.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense to me. That's kind of like the thing in a Chinese ghost story where the guy's I forget what he says, but he recites that it's like Bali or something or some foreign language that he's supposed to be reciting the sutra from, and every time he says it, something happens.
Yep.
And I think that's a common thing that you see in genres like that.
I'll even I remember reading through the Lord of the Rings RPG that Decipher did, where it introduced this idea of subtle magics that are constantly present, where just speaking the names of certain things can have an effect.
Like Voldemort or something.
Yeah, there's that. But for example, Gandalf speaking the names of the Valar causing
Surprise, motherfucker!
causing the Balrog to physically recoil, or speaking Sauron's name, or the like, getting the attention of his minions. So I guess you could say the Voldemort thing, except it's even more tangible. Whereas in Harry Potter, people saying Voldemort's name was more of bad luck or ill omen, not you'll actually get his force's attention if you say it.
Oh, for some reason, I mean, I've only seen a few of the movies, but I assume that like saying his name actually did something for some reason.
No, it's just that there was so much superstition
Mhm.
about it, and you know the old saying, there are no atheists in foxholes.
Mhm.
Uh, but ev and I will admit something that I think was really surprising when we were going through the book was for a game that's focused on immortals, this is a very lethal game when it comes to combat.
Yeah, again, that was something where I really felt like I needed to see it in action to evaluate how dangerous it was because I was having trouble imagining how combat would actually play out. And but yeah, I mean, again, I think that might also be a product of the time it was made. Um, I think that this was still an era where games did tend to be a little more lethal, maybe. But
I I think it's more a representation of the kind of forces that you're up against. Um, because now, now when I say that, what I mean is it can add up very quickly. Uh, but you're usually going up against either other immortals um or the kind of monsters that would be that level of threat.
so
Yaogwai
it's like
is the more common one, but the monster list runs the gamut of the various very weird monsters that are in
I
mythologies.
liked the monsters in there. No, because they I actually liked because what did they do? They told you to use classics of the mountains and seas as a sort of a if you wanted to create your own monster, and you could see that a lot of the monsters in there were drawn from that, and so I
Hmm.
thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say, I think maybe the lethality level is kind of like Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain type of thing, where you just
Hmm.
the power levels are so high that some even immortals are at risk of dying.
Yeah. Uh, I think the game makes pretty clear from the outset that just because you're a immortal doesn't mean you first off doesn't mean that you're fully ageless, and second off, you're not unkillable. You're just harder to kill.
Harder to kill. But actually, I do have to head out,
Yeah,
Mildra.
yeah. I think this is as good a spot as any to wrap this up. I know things got a bit derailed here and there, but I think it was a pretty productive experience.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Hmm. And it's always fun whenever I can bring in people to talk about the totality of the RPG experience. But with that said, as always, a sincere thanks to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens here. And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.